I'd like to welcome to the stage Mark Diamond of Antisense Therapeutics. Welcome up.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you to the conference organisers for the opportunity to present on Antisense Therapeutics this morning. Antisense Therapeutics is based in Melbourne, Australia. We are a biopharmaceutical drug development company. We're listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. Our ticker is ANP. As the name suggests, the company is focused on commercialising its pipeline of antisense compounds, and we have an advanced stage pipeline. We've had 2 drugs that have been through successful phase 2 clinical trials. This slide here lists the overview of the company. We have a market capitalisation, as you see there, of 9 million. With respect to the cash position of the company, we recently raised $5 million through an institutionally backed capital raising in Australia. That funding, the $5 million, will fund the development activities that the company is undertaking, which I'll go through in more detail in my presentation, and the company through to 2020. The slide here just details those key activities that the company are undertaking. I first point out that the antisense drugs that are in our pipeline, we have acquired those from a company called Ionis Pharmaceuticals. Ionis Pharmaceuticals are acknowledged as the world leaders in the field of antisense drug development and commercialisation. They have a market capitalisation of about $6 billion and drug collaborations with some of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. So we've got 2 drugs that we've have through that collaboration with ISIS, AT1102 and AT1103. Both of these drugs have been through successful phase 2 clinical trials. The $5 million that we recently raised, it was led by a institutional investor in Australia called Australian Ethical Investments. They've become our largest shareholder now with over 19% of the company. We also had participating Platinum Asset Management, who you may know as a global equity fund manager. They now own 6% of the company. Came in to this raising to support these 2 key programs that I'll go through in more detail in my presentation. The first is we want to undertake a phase 2 clinical trial of one of our drugs in a disease called Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And we're also looking at running what's known as an early access program in Europe with our drug AT1103. The Duchenne's muscular dystrophy program, we're expecting to kick off at the end of this quarter. So this month we're looking to start enrolment of patients into the study. The early access program, which is where we'll be making our drug available to patients in Europe who are currently failing existing acromegaly treatments. Again, we're expecting that, to be able to initiate that program at the end of the 3rd quarter of this year. So, we've lots of catalysts that are presenting to us, and which will also present as important news flow opportunities. This slide here details the antisense technology. How does it work? Simply put, it's a novel and elegant way of making highly targeted therapeutics. The antisense drugs are simply chemically modified pieces of DNA that are designed to inhibit specific disease-causing proteins. Our partner Ionis, they have now 3 of these antisense drugs approved from the FDA. They have a further 30 in clinical development, either themselves or with pharmaceutical partners such as Biogen, IDEC, Roche, AstraZeneca, and Novartis. So the IP that Ionis have licensed to those major pharmaceutical companies is equivalent to what we've been able to access from Ionis. So, this is a mature platform technology, significantly de-risked, which we have got unique access to commercialise. The product pipeline, as I highlighted earlier, we've got AT1102 for Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, about to start a phase 2 clinical trial. AT1103 for acromegaly, about to conduct our early access program in Europe, where we're looking to seek reimbursement for drug supply there, so it presents as a significant revenue opportunity. And we have AT1102 for another indication in MS, which given the time constraints, I won't be able to go through in the presentation today. Duchenne's muscular dystrophy is one of the most common fatal genetic diseases. It afflicts boys only. The incidence is about 1 in 3,500. So there's about 45,000 boys in the US and Europe that have this disease. It's caused by a genetic mutation that prevents the boys from being able to make muscular dystrophin, leads to severe progressive muscle loss, and, as I said, unfortunately, premature death for these boys. Up until the end of 2016, there were no approved therapeutics for the treatment of boys with Duchenne. So it is and remains a high unmet medical need, and the approval in 2016 was for a drug that was going to help with the restoration of the dystrophin levels in these boys that were unable to make it. That drug is only applicable to the 13% of boys that have that specific genetic mutation. The other key aspect of this disease is that with the reduction of the dystrophin, it leads to progressive muscle wasting, which then feeds into an inflammatory process and fibrotic processes. So treating the inflammation is a real key aspect of managing these patients. And to date, the only way of managing the inflammation is through the use of oral corticosteroids, which have to be given chronically to these boys, basically for the rest of their lives, and associated with some very significant side effects. So our drug, AT1102, we are looking to use as a therapeutic to treat the inflammation associated with the disease. AT1102 has already been shown to be active in patients with multiple sclerosis. We ran a phase 2 clinical trial where we were able to show a significant reduction in inflammatory lesions of the brain within only 2 months of dosing. 1 month following the last dose, we showed a 90% reduction in inflammatory lesions. This drug clearly has very profound effects on the inflammatory processes in that autoimmune disease setting. The other reason we're confident about the potential of this drug in Duchenne's is that recently, scientific teams out of France and Brazil published a paper to show that boys that had lymphocytes, white blood cells, T cells specifically, that were overexpressing of a protein called CD49D, the cell surface receptor on white blood cells. Boys that had more of this CD49D were at greater risk of severe progression with the disease and more rapid progression and greater severity of symptoms. Our drug, AT1102, targets this particular protein. So it inhibits the production of the protein. So we've got a drug that's known to work on inflammatory processes and also targeting a molecule protein that researchers have shown to be critical in the inflammatory process. This slide here details our scientific advisory board. Just point out that we're running the study at the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne, which run the biggest clinic with boys with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. The two principal investigators are heads of that department, at least Professor Monique Ryan and Dr. Ian Woodcock, who are going to be running the trial. We have also down here highlighted Bill Goolsbee, who was the ex-chairman of the company Sarepta, who saw approval of as I said earlier, the world's first drug for treating muscular dystrophy. And so Bill is coming to this company with all the experience and knowledge of how to develop and commercialise an antisense drug. Bill introduced us to Steve Wilton, who's the inventor of that drug, eteplirsen. That drug is now selling over $150 million annually in sales, and the company market capitalisation of $6 billion. So the clinical trial that we're looking to run, as I said, one site at the Royal Children's Hospital. We have ethics committee approval to run the study. We're going to be dosing boys for 6 months. So we think in that time we are giving ourselves an opportunity to show the drug's effect on the disease progression. The study expecting to get underway at the end of this month, have dosing complete by the first quarter of next year. Trial results we're expecting soon after. So within less than 12 months from here, we expect to have pivotal data of 6 months of dosing in boys with this devastating condition, which we think could present as a major catalyst and value creation point for the company, and is the major reason we had that institutional investment in the stock. Just point to the compelling case for value creation with the company, to say that when Sarepta Therapeutics commenced their DMD program, they had a market capitalisation around 60 million. This was in the time that Bill Goolsbee, as I said, who's a non-directive director of my board, was their chairman. On approval of that drug, only 4 years later, the market capitalisation peaked at 3.3 billion. As I said now, market cap of $6 billion. I'm not sure where I got to in the time. I just maybe present one last slide, if it's okay, highlighting that our early access program for our drug for acromegaly, we're looking to supply drug into Europe. We've got enough drug to provide compound to acromegalic patients for 12 patients for up to a year. We look at getting reimbursement for the drug. We think that we'll be able to charge that out at about $100,000 a year. So we think, again, in terms of short-term opportunity, a chance of generating very significant revenue within that time frame that I highlighted before, where the funding takes us to 2018. Thanks very much.